In today's episode, we're going to learn how one coffee shop, a single coffee shop in Seattle, has gone on to create a business dynasty that we can look at and study and learn from. Hi, I'm Chris Reynolds, and I'm on a mission to help independent financial advisors build a better business through a remarkable client experience. In this podcast, you're going to learn how to do that from my conversations with the visionaries, the leaders, the independent advisors who are reshaping the future of the financial advice industry. At the end of each episode, you're going to walk away with an actionable idea that you can take and use right now, and it will help you to build a better business today. This is Turning the Page. One of my favorite books is The E-Myth by Michael Gerber, and he talks about a practitioner versus the entrepreneur. So what's the difference? Practitioner is somebody who builds a business around themselves, whereas an entrepreneur builds a business around processes which deliver quality products and experiences to a consumer that can be duplicated over and over and over again. Ladies and gentlemen, in today's podcast, it's just me, and I want to talk about one of the most important parts of building a business, and that's to make it scalable. It's one thing to open a business. It's one thing to say that you're an entrepreneur, but it's a whole other thing to make a business that can be scalable, that can be bigger and bigger and bigger. And I've spent my entire career trying to study what makes business successful. I mean, truly successful, and there's commonalities among them. And I'm going to illustrate that through an example. And I use this example quite a bit with my own team. And the question I ask everybody is, have you ever been to Seattle? And I have. My cousin lives in Seattle. Been there a couple of times. And other than being the birthplace of grunge rock, which also a favorite of mine, it also has tons of successful businesses that operate out of the city. And you can look at them and you can study them and you can ask them, how did they become so successful? So if you go down to the wharf in Seattle, there's a fish market there, and that whole area is called Pike Place. And it's a beautiful spot. And as you walk around, you're going to see at some point a huge lineup that goes all the way down the block. And if you follow that line to where it ends up at the very first Starbucks. But the actual fact is it's actually the second Starbucks, but the first one doesn't exist anymore. So we'll use that one as my example. And this might not seem that significant to anyone who's not in the study of the business, like I am. But to me, that spot is incredibly inspiring as an entrepreneur. And here's why. Howard Schultz started with one store in this area called Pike Place. He actually bought it, but he took that one idea and he looked at all the cafes, coffee shops in Milan and Italy, and he said, this is going to be my prototype. What I'm going to build here at Pike Place is going to be the best way to deliver coffee. So this is where Howard and his team perfected the concept of the Italian coffee shop for mass production. Truly inspiring. And first they started with, of course, what is the most important part? The coffee types. But then they tinkered with the look, the feel, the uniforms, the service, the writing the name on the cup. They tested, and they asked customers what they liked. They asked customers what they didn't like, and they modified. And soon they perfected the franchise. They perfected the perfect way to deliver coffee in a systematic way that can be utilized in mass production. And then you know what they did? After they had the first Pike Place, they opened 12,000 of them across the world. They built on a massive scale a coffee shop, and is based on that scale was perfected by the one model. And as they opened more, they learned more, they changed some of the formulas, they opened more, they learned more, they changed the formula, but it was always around the prototype. They closed stores that weren't profitable, they opened more that were. And what they did was built a world-class team to continue to open more and more and more stores that duplicated that success over and over and over again. And here we are today. And last time I looked, Starbucks, which is just a coffee company, has a total market capitalization of, believe it or not, $128 billion. So from one place in Pike Place in Seattle, they created a coffee dynasty worth $128 billion. This is every entrepreneurial dream. And by the way, they did all of this in my lifetime. This wasn't something that took hundreds of years to do. They created from nothing Starbucks from that one place. So the trick that every entrepreneur that is listening to me should be thinking about is, how do I perfect that formula? And once you've perfected that formula, the trick is to duplicate that magic over and over and over again. So let's look at your business and ask yourself, how does this concept apply to my business? Well, the first question I always ask every entrepreneur, whether they're starting a business, they're in business, or they want to take their business to the next level, the first thing you really have to ask yourself is, who are your clients? Because as much as you would like to, you can't be everything to everybody. Okay? Who do you serve? Starbucks knew their clients' habits, their choices, their wants. They continued to study who their key customers were, who they were going to target, what their wants were, what their needs were, and they built their product around the needs of that client. So once again, think of yours. How do you build a product around the needs of your primary client? And it may not be the client you have today, but it might be a client you want tomorrow. Start with them and work backwards. You know, too many people I've seen, what they do is they build some sort of product or some sort of service or something, and then they go out and try to find a client. It's way easier to find a client, find a very particular need that they have, solve a problem for you or for them, solve a problem for them, and solve it better than anybody else in the industry. That's step one. What's step two? Step two is build an experience around it. Like Starbucks, coffee was only part of the formula. In fact, there's tons of coffee shops, but what makes Starbucks unique? What makes Starbucks unique is the experience. The real trick is creating a world-class client experience that is unique, remarkable, and repeatable. And the reason I say remarkable is remarkable being the experience is so good that your client must tell other people about it. And that's how you grow. You start with one and you create such a great experience that they are almost compelled to tell other people about it. And that's where the growth comes from. And you continue to focus on that experience and make it better and better and better. What's step three? Learn and perfect. Whatever you do at first is probably not right. Once you have your prototype, you have to learn from it. You know, what do your clients like? What do they hate? What would they remark more on? What do they appreciate? What don't they appreciate? What makes them come back? What makes them buy more? Your prototype is all about making the perfect franchise. And so therefore you have to measure. You have to have KPIs, which are key performance indicators. And your whole team needs to rally around these KPIs. You have to really, really, really understand who your key client is, what makes them tick, what makes them buy, what makes them not buy, and how do you perfect your model around them. And then once you really understand that, you have your prototype, you understand your client, you understand the problem you're solving, you can duplicate it over and over, then hire the best people. Step 4, get the best people on board. Once you're satisfied that the product and experience is perfected, hire the best team to bring it all together. You can never do it alone. You need a team and a team of people who do things other than what you do. In fact, the best team is a whole bunch of people who have different skill sets, bringing together a vision, bringing together a business that is scalable, that can be duplicated over and over and over and over. And once again, that really brings you to number 5, which is then once you have this perfected prototype, this franchise, you have a great team of people, now start to duplicate that scale. And the faster that you can do it, the better. So now that you've done it once, do it again. And if you're like Starbucks, you can do it thousands of times. And this is called funnel management. Each step is replicated over and over and over. Each step of the funnels. We know how to open a store. We know how to attract clients. We know what those clients will buy. We know how much profit we're going to make per store. And each one that we open, anyone that falls outside of those categories is shut down or they are propped back up. And of course, number 6, as you've heard me study, talk about and study before, which is Kaizen, always continue to refine. Don't make huge changes to your business all at once. Refine it little steps at a time, because little steps at a time over a long period of time equals perfection. So these are steps taken from every successful investor. I just use Starbucks as my example, but you can look at business after business after business who have been large scales, who are now brand names in our lives, whether it's Starbucks, whether it's McDonald's, whether it's Apple, whether it's Disney, and I can go on with example after example, and they all have the same traits. They figure out a prototype, they figure out a specific client and a specific problem they're going to solve for that client. They create a great franchise, and then they duplicate it over and over. So now go back to you. Who are your key clients? What problems are you solving? How do you build a repeatable client experience around it and focus on prototype that you can replicate over and over and over? Now, as much as I say it, it's not easy, but the formula for success is there. And once you find that magic formula, the world is yours. Now, if you have some ideas and you want to chat about how you can create that prototype for yourself, I would love to have a virtual coffee with you. Just, send me an email. Happy to chat. Thank you for your listening. And every time you go into a Starbucks from now on, think about Pike Place. Thanks for joining me on Turning the Page. What did you learn from today's episode? If you follow me on LinkedIn, please drop me a comment there. I'd love to chat with you about it over a virtual coffee. Send me a message on LinkedIn, or you can do so at our website. The link's in the show notes. I'm Chris Reynolds, and until next time.